Hi again, everyone. Today is day 7 of World FTD Awareness Week. All week, I've been sharing interviews on different aspects of the FTD journey and highlighting actions you can take to help advance a future free of FTD. The theme for today is research, focused on work to better understand, diagnose, treat, cure, and ultimately prevent every form of FTD. And for such a hopeful topic, I am grateful to be speaking today with Dr. Bruce Miller, who is known as a global pioneer in FTD research. Dr. Miller is a leading expert in FTD. He is a distinguished professor of neurology at the University of California, San Francisco, and the leader of the Global Brain Health Initiative. He is a member of the AFTD's Medical Advisory Council and featured prominently in a 60-minute segment that helped to put FTD on the map. He has appeared in countless outlets from the New York Times, Fortune, and PBS NewsHour, to name a few. Dr. Miller, I am so thrilled and honored to be able to have you here today.
Well, I'm the one who's thrilled and honored. So grateful to you for the incredible work you're doing for our illness. I think at this time, it's really going to make a huge difference for people afflicted with this illness and people in the future who won't get it because of the work that you're doing.
Well, it's really about the work and that your team are doing that I am so grateful for. You know, I was able to come visit you and your team at UCSF a couple of weeks ago, and you know, being in that room with you and your team who, you know, they are so passionate, you can tell, and care so much about what they are doing. And one of the things I remember you saying was that, you know, we are obsessed with finding a cure. And I remember that once you said that, it was like I had this wafting in my ears, like I just didn't hear anything else after that. And I was like, it makes me emotional. And I, you know, I was just so happy to hear that that is the kind of energy that you guys have at UCSF and just helping to find a cure. So let's get into this interview because there's so much to dive into and you have so much to share. Okay, so what led you to focus on FTD in your career?
One of the most remarkable things that I learned during my fellowship at UCLA with a man named Frank Benson was that changes in behavior that happen particularly in midlife, changes in personality, changes in the way we relate to others, represent a change in the brain. And in many instances, in the people I saw, the change was cause for frontotemporal dementia. So this was really, for me, a paradigm shift. I'd always thought about the brain as important for memory and language, and it is. But this idea that the brain also is responsible for our social interactions, how we relate to others, how we nurture and empathize. This to me was a tremendous insight. And from the minute I realized this, I knew I wanted to study this illness.
So what was the hardest part about getting started in this field? And what told you that you were on the right track with this work?
Well, initially, no one believed that this was really an illness. And it's pretty hard to convince people in science that you're studying a real disease if they think that everything that causes changes later in life is Alzheimer's. So for the first 20 years, writing papers about this, there was massive skepticism. I think the big change in our field happened in 1998 when the first gene was discovered associated with frontotemporal dementia. This was the tau gene, responsible for about half of the cases. And when this discovery was made, I think people really began to understand this is not only a disorder that changes our behavior, but it's caused by specific genes and environmental factors. And then, I think people started to realize that we could study this. And in 2003, our group got a grant called Genes, Images, and Emotions from the National Institute of Health. And this grant is still running. And it's allowed us to really probe deeply into what this disease is, what it isn't. And, now we have huge goals about being able to diagnose everyone with this illness, in particular early, because early is going to be when we can treat this.
So I've been able to get to know you over the past couple months, and what I know of you, not only being brilliant and so passionate about your work and your research, but I would also like to know what's something that people might not know about you in your life outside of work.
Thank you. Well, I've lived in San Francisco for 25 years, and I love the city. I run in Golden Gate Park 4 times a week and get to think about my research while I run, and also look at birds and people. I've really been thrilled working with my now 11-year-old grandson, cementing his baseball career. And he's an extraordinary baseball player, but also an extraordinary person. So for me, my life is very much about family. It's about my personal family, but also the FTD community, and also my family at UCSF.
Okay, so this is one of my favorite questions. So what is new and exciting in the world of FTD treatments, and what should families be hopeful for?
Well, I think that having you, Emma Willis, as an advocate for our field is incredibly exciting, because I think we're at a tipping point. And people have to hear about this disease, and they don't hear it very well from scientists, but they hear it wonderfully from someone like you, who is eloquent and is part of the life of Bruce Willis. So for me, this is extremely exciting and hopeful. The other thing that I'm very hopeful about is that we're getting better and better at diagnosis. We are reaching the stage where we can, hoping that we can diagnose every single person that we see, not only saying that they have frontotemporal dementia, not just a simple psychiatric disorder or Alzheimer's disease, but also we're beginning to make headway into treatment. It's a time when new therapies like CRISPR, which led to the Nobel Prize for Jennifer Doudna, is now being applied to the study of FTD. So we're at UCSF with Jennifer thinking about whether there are genes in an individual person that might be responsible for their illness. And then the next idea is, can we cut those genes out or replace them? So it's really a time of incredible hope. And I honestly never imagined that we'd be at a stage like this.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And like I said, when I got to speak with you guys at UCSF, it was just, oh my God, it was like I could breathe a little bit, just to know that like there are things coming in the future. It's so hard when you get this diagnosis of FTD and you think, okay, like, well, what are we going to do to treat this? And I think what the hardest thing for me has been that there hasn't really been any treatments. There isn't a drug. There isn't, that I feel that treat the disease. You can treat the symptoms, all day long, but like, I really want to see a world where we can start to treat the disease, and you guys are really chipping away at that.
Well, thank you. Your insight is so important. And I think the other sad part of this is how long the delay is for diagnosis. So with the way this usually goes, it's often 2 or 3 years, even at best, even people with some resources before they actually get a diagnosis. And imagine time lost as we start to develop therapies for people. We really want this disease diagnosed in its earliest stages. That's the challenge.
Dr. Miller, one of the things that you had said to me during our meeting was like early signs and symptoms that present that I thought was so interesting. Can you share what your mentor had talked to you about?
Yes, yeah. So I came to UCLA to work with a man named Frank Benson, who studied the frontal lobes and also studied language. And Frank was really ahead of his time. And so when working with Frank, one of the first things he told me, which was for me at first shocking, but now it's an accepted part of how I work, is that if you see someone in midlife when things should be stable in our personality and behavior, or even improving, if you see a change in personality or change in behavior that is negative, this often means that there's a change in the brain. We have to think this way. We can't just write these things off to midlife crises or depression. It's not. It's something very different. And the frontal lobes so define who we are. They help to define whether we're empathic for others, whether we respect them, whether we regulate our behavior, whether we can attend properly to what other people are saying. So it's social brain. And this is what this disease attacks. It attacks the social nature of us, the part of our brain that allows us to love and work with others.
Okay, so what is the best way for people who have a personal connection to FTD support research, and why is that so important?
The time is now. It's such an important question. We have organizations like the Association for Frontotemporal Dementia that work with families across the world, focused though in the United States. They also support research. So if you or a loved one, there's a concern about frontotemporal dementia, really important that you connect with a great center that really has expertise on this. And the AFTD often helps in that space. There are other organizations, the Tau Consortium, Bluefield, the Global Brain Health Institute, that are all working fiercely to find better treatments for these diseases. So does the Alzheimer's Association. So I think supporting those organizations is also incredibly important. But we're getting very close. And I think this will have a massive effect on our society in the most positive way. And we don't want to lose our brilliant actors like Bruce Willis. We can't. The wisdom that they have, the way they change people's lives. We can't lose one person like Bruce.
For families on this journey who see research gaining ground, are there signs that treatments could be available soon? And what does soon mean to research in this space? Is it 3 to 5 years for some treatments sound realistic to you? Could it take longer?
Yeah. So yeah, the time is now. And so I think in particular for the genetic forms of frontotemporal dementia, we already have potential cures that are being tried across the world. In the case of the progranulin gene that causes about 10% of frontotemporal dementia, the familial type, we now have, I think, potential cures. We have 8 pharmaceutical companies with drugs that they're either offering or about ready to offer. So I think imagine losing that opportunity. Getting to the right places in an urgent way is really, really important. I think there will not be a one drug treats all. And I think that's true for Alzheimer's disease as well. This is, a mistake to think of this as just one thing. So I think that the first diseases that will fall are the genetic forms of frontotemporal dementia. But as we learn how to treat those, I think we're also going to be able to treat the sporadic forms. One of my mentors, a man named Patrick McGeer, brilliant neuroscientist, used to talk about polio and talk about how awful it was in society, losing children, losing adults with this, or leaving them profoundly paralyzed. And imagine the day when polio would be gone. It's gone. And that's what, with your help, with the scientific community, with the NIH, this is going to change this as well. It has to be eliminated.
So it was so amazing to see Jake Broder's play Unraveled. I was so excited to be able to come to San Francisco to be able to see that. It was really just something so beautiful and unique, really special. The play written by Jake Broder, Unraveled, is about a woman that we saw around 2008. Her name is Anne Adams. She was a scientist in British Columbia. And as Anne slowly developed progressive loss of language, she had a burst of creativity that was really exceptional. One of the most beautiful paintings that she made was called Unraveled. It was a poem, and it was about the composer Ravel, who she became obsessed with. And in this painting, visually, Anne made a painting that captured the music composition by Ravel called Bolero that we all know so well. It captured the repetition, the crescendo. And so this is a play about Anne, her work, the relationship with Ravel, who died around 1930, remarkably with a progressive aphasia. And as we've been able to look back at Ravel's work, we realize that Bolero was written when he was in the early stages of a progressive aphasia. So this is a theme that we're very excited about. That is, one part of the brain turns down or turns off, it can release function in other parts of the brain. So one of the general themes with particularly our individuals with progressive language disorder is the visual part of the brain. The back part of the brain is hyperactive. People like Bill Seeley have shown this with imaging. This may be a very early way to diagnose these diseases, capturing with imaging the upregulation of circuit that was ordinarily not upregulated, because this happens before someone develops symptoms. But the other part of the story of Anne Adams and Jake Broder is the humanity of our caregivers. In the same way that when one system stops working in the brain, others, step up. We see this with caregivers, with families, with people like you, Emma, who, when things become fragile, step in to make a huge difference. And this parallels the way we humans are. So it's a story of loss, but gain. And also, it's often a story of caregivers and the remarkable way that they step in to keep their loved one alive and respected and bring out the best in them. For some, we've learned that artistic creations are very easily done in the setting of the progressive aphasias. For others, it may be the release of music. So I think it's opened up all sorts of new therapies for people, particularly earlier, when they can focus and attend, and might even bring out, new and great artistic work that we had never imagined. So I wonder if, for families who are on this journey, like, how do you leverage the power of art and music for them? Absolutely. And I think, for some people, we give up, we stop, and we're so devastated by this illness that, we let it wash over us and our loved one. But for those like you who really care, bringing to bear whatever is therapeutic and helpful is really important. And I don't think it'll be one size fit all either. I think for some people it will be music, for others it will be dance, for others it will be singing, for others it may be visual creativity. But we must look for those aspects of humanity that are still there
when this disease hits.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. So I'm going to get into the calls of action for today. So if you haven't done so already, sign up for the FTD Disorders Registry to receive the latest information on research, opportunities for you and your family. If you have a personal connection to FTD, share where you hope to see the field of FTD research reach in the next 5 years. And why is it so important to you? And if you go to the AFTD.org via the link that I'm going to put at the bottom of this video, you'll find messaging and graphics you can download and share. And if you haven't already, we encourage you to change your profile picture on social media. Just go to the link in this video description and follow the instructions to show the world you care about FTD. Dr. Miller, I thank you so much for your time. I get emotional speaking to you because you are doing so much beautiful work in this field. I thank you and your team for all that you're doing for us and our families. I thank you and that you feel the urgency, and I just really appreciate you and your time.
The feeling is so mutual, and I think I speak for the entire world, but the courage that you, Bruce Willis, the Willis family have shown, your willingness to speak out about a disease, it's really the first. You're really the first person, of renown who has taken a step forward for us. And your empathy, your kindness, your charisma. This is so important for our field. Every time anyone talks with Emma Willis, they are moved and hopeful. So you bring incredible hope to us. I can't tell you how grateful we are to you and your husband, who's every movie I have seen and adored. So as you know, I'm not alone in that space. Yeah.
Yes, people do love Bruce and his movies and the person that he is, truly. But again, thank you so much for being here today, and you just shared so much with us, and it's just super impactful. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.